So this is going to be the first time we're going to ever look at algebra. A lot of people are scared of algebra and a lot of people don't like algebra because they find it difficult. But if you really put in a big effort from the start to the end of these exercises, I can guarantee you that you will get a good understanding of what algebra is all about. So I want you guys to all think about how important hard work is and to not be scared to make a mistake, because as we always do in mathematics, mistakes come, but it's eventually how we get over them that we're going to be able to do the learning. So the focus of today's lesson is to learn the basic terminology of algebra, to learn the key words. What do the key words in algebra mean? So we're going to look at words like variable and pronumeral, and we're going to look at words that describe the four operations, which is plus, minus, multiplication, and division. And we're going to also look at more key terms, key words like coefficients, terms, constants, expressions. And then we're going to learn how to write an expression from worded descriptions. Now this does sound like a lot, but we'll break it down as we go, slide by slide. So a big part of algebra is trying to figure out the unknown. And I guess that's why a lot of people struggle with it, because it's something that we don't know, which makes us think that we don't understand it. So when we're looking at the word pronumeral or variable, it is a letter used to represent a number. And usually this number here is something that we don't know. For example, we're trying to find the number of goals kicked or the amount of money spent. That's something unknown. And if we don't know what that is, we usually represent that with a letter from the alphabet. And usually we use the letter X. No real reason why, but you can pick any letter you want if you get the chance to pick. And it can be any letter from the alphabet. In algebra, the word term or a term can be just a single number by itself, like 7 or 8 or 10 or 20. It can be a pronumeral. We've just learnt now that a pronumeral is pretty much just a letter. So A, B, C, any one of those letters. And it can also be a number and a pronumeral combined with either multiplication or division. So 15 times B, 4 divided by B. These are just examples, okay? So there can be any number or any letter. When we combine a number and a letter together, if you remember from last year, we don't put the multiplication symbol in between because it's maths. We like to do things really shorthand, so we can just put 15b, and we all know that that means 15 times b. The one there, here you can see 4 divided by b. We don't have to just write 4 divided by b. We can write 4 over b. When we're writing terms, the coefficient is the number that goes in front of the pronumeral. So in this case here, you can see that 15b, right? The number in front of the pronumeral is the coefficient. So 15 would be the coefficient of b. Pronumerals should be written in alphabetical order. So just say we have an example where there are 2 letters next to each other, or 3 letters, 6, X, Y, Z. Make sure that you put the numbers, or the letters, in alphabetical order. So let's use our knowledge on what term is in the top right corner to count how many there are in this expression. And I'll go through the definition of an expression in the next slide. To count how many terms there are, we use the plus and the minus symbol. And between every plus and minus is another term. So you can see here that until we see a plus sign, we've got 14 dy, and that's the third type of term. Then we've got the same type of term straight after the plus sign. Then the next one is negative 24. That's just a single number. The one after that is just a pronumeral. The one after that is the third type, and the last one is just a pronumeral. So we have a total of 6 terms in this expression. The difference between an equation and an expression is simply just the equal sign. So if you look at the two definitions here, an equation always has an equal sign. On the left-hand side of the equal sign, there is a few terms. On the right-hand side, there is a term. Now that doesn't mean there always has to be one term on the right and 4 on the left. It can be 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 2 and 3. It can be as many terms as you like, as long as there is terms on both sides and an equal sign. An expression is a combination of numbers and pronumerals combined with mathematical operations. So basically, without sounding too fancy, it's just a whole heap of terms without an equal sign. We already know that a coefficient is the number in front of a pronumeral, but what happens if we have a pronumeral like we've got in blue with no number in front of it? Well, that would mean that our coefficient is 1 because we have 1m. Doesn't have to have the number 1 in front of it, but if you see just a letter by itself, just remember that the coefficient is 1. And the one in orange, if we have a combination of numbers and pronumerals, and that number comes after a minus sign, well, the coefficient is not 25, but it's negative 25. So make sure you're always looking. The term starts with the plus or the minus sign on the left. Okay, so for the first one, the coefficient would be plus 1, and for the second one, the coefficient would be negative 25. In the key ideas for this exercise, there is a lot of things here that I'm assuming you guys would already know, just a few key words. When we're talking about the sum of two pronumerals, we're talking about adding them together. The difference is subtracting them. The product is multiplying them. The quotient is dividing them. And the square is when you multiply the same letter with itself, just like you would when you square 5. So if you're squaring 5, it's 5 times 5. If you're squaring 3, it's 3 times 3, and so on. So let's look at a few examples of how we can get word descriptions and turn them into algebra expressions. So for the first one, we've got 5 more than k. So it's either going to be a plus, a minus, a multiplication, or a division. If we've got 5 more than k, then we can say that we have k plus 5. If I have 3 less than m, we know that we're going to do minus subtraction, but is it 3 minus m or m minus 3? These actually make a difference. The reason why we didn't talk about this before was because 5 plus k or k plus 5, it's pretty much the same thing. But here 3 minus m and m minus 3 is two different expressions. So if I have 3 less than m, it means I'm taking away 3 from m, which means it's that one. The sum of a and b, again, the sum doesn't matter whether you go a plus b or b plus a. Okay, these are both fine. So I'm going to rub out this one so we don't have any confusion. And double the value of x. If I'm doubling something, okay, I'm going to multiply it by 2. So 2 times x. Or in algebra, instead of writing 2 times x, we just say 2x. And then you'll notice that I do my x a little bit curvy, and you'll see that there's a reason why we do that. It's because you don't want to confuse your x's with your multiplication symbols. Alright, and the last one, product of C and D. We remember that the product means multiplication, so it's C times D, but in algebra, we just write CD. Okay, so whenever you have a letter next to a letter, it means multiplication. If you have a number next to a letter, it still means multiplication. Just to sum up all the key words and all the key definitions that we've learned in this PowerPoint, it's a nice little visual here to see what each of those words means and what they represent. So the yellow arrows here, they're all pointing to letters. These are called pronumerals or variables. The green underlined or the green arrows, they're all a new set of lines, a new green line is made after a minus or a plus symbol. So these are all called terms. And just remembering that, for example, the second term starts with negative 6xy. So we do take the sign on the left with us. Okay, so the negative 6xy, the negative 7, the plus 9x, and so on. So make sure that you know that the new term starts with either a minus or a plus. Here we have numbers highlighted in red or numbers highlighted in green. The numbers in red are the coefficients of the pronumerals. So the one that I'm pointing to here is 9 is the coefficient of x. The last red number would be negative 3. Negative 3 is a coefficient of m. And these numbers here in green, they don't have any pronumerals or any letters or anything like that. So these are called constant terms. Okay. Everything here in this blue box is an expression because there's no equal sign, and everything altogether is called an equation.